Oh, hi. I didn't see you there. I was lost in Paul Hollywood's gorgeous, icy blue eyes. Come on over, have a seat on the couch. No, the other one, don't sit next to me, I don't like close proximity. Make yourself comfortable. There's some biscuits on the table. I'll pour you a cup of coffee, and we can have a pleasant chat about why the Great British Bake Off is so good. The Great British Bake Off, or Great British Baking Show if you live in America or Canada, because somehow Pillsbury trademarked the phrase bake off, can best be described as pleasant, really. It's a surprisingly chill competition series that I personally wish I could inject directly into my veins like shoe cream flavored morphine. But how exactly does a wholesome baking competition featuring exclusively amateurs from random towns across the UK that compete for nothing more than a commemorative plate become a cultural phenomenon worshipped by legions of adoring fans? Well, you see, sometimes Paul likes the food so much, he offers the baker a firm handshake, and it's fucking electric, I tell you. Let's start by talking about what makes the format of Bake Off unique and whimsical. The bog standard reality competition series, your Survivors and Big Brothers, work a little something like this. A large cast is chosen mostly from audition tapes, but sometimes other ways, and they're all brought together in one place, where they only have each other to talk to, so as to ensure they go stir-crazy. An overarching gimmick produces a theme to maintain over the course of the season, like rivals or betrayal or redemption or something. One cycle of daily challenge and some sort of cast-shrinking event makes up the typical episode, and the raw footage is watched down by story producers, who develop between 2 and 4 narrative through lines to follow during that time frame, wrapping them around the game structure to produce an episodic formula. After that, story teams supplant the footage with interview bites, shot preferably within a few days of, but honestly sometimes not even within a few weeks of, the time frame being covered. And depending on how trashy the production is willing to be, a certain amount of drama may be artificially injected in through shady editing practices. This isn't as commonly straight-up fake as people think it is. It can be as simple as moving a full conversation slightly up or down the timeline to help prop up a subplot. But some shows definitely care less about giving their casts a fair cut than they do about building heat like WrestleMania is 2 weeks away. What does that have to do with Bake Off? Very little, actually, and it really works for them. While a standard reality competition show is designed to maximize drama and entertainment value, which is not to disparage them in general, it's just how the genre works, Bake Off is designed to communicate passion. This is also not to say that people who make or even compete on the Survivors of the world aren't truly invested more often than not in what they're doing, but that Bake Off exists solely to celebrate and share a love for baking. Again, this is for exactly $0. The structure of an episode is centered around the 3 challenges, signature and technical one day and showstopper the next. Since everyone goes home for the week between competition, which is held exclusively on weekends because these are amateur bakers with day jobs, there's no reality segments to play. Instead, extra time is given to exploring why the bakers are doing whatever they're doing for a specific challenge, effectively building them as characters through the competition itself, because food communicates who you are exceedingly well. Going on a tangent here a little, Bake Off works really hard to cast an absolute spectrum of people for every season, from all ethnicities and walks of life, which never fails to produce its own interesting subset of styles and strategies, strengths and weaknesses, etc., etc. Back to structure. There is no shortage of reality, or more specifically drama-light competition shows, especially in the world of cooking. Chopped, Iron Chef, Guy's Grocery Games, whatever your favorite flavor, and a great many of them express boundless creativity and passion from their contestants. But with respect to them, of course, most of these people aren't really characters to us because they only stick around for one episode. And so the only information we get is a basic bio focusing mostly on their cooking experience. There are also other season-long cooking competition shows like MasterChef or Hell's Kitchen, but these shows are very intense and they make me frightened and unwell. Bake Off's greatest asset is the approachable nature of its cast, a group of people just like you and me who happen to love baking, and building a full season of television on the joy of watching them bond with each other and grow as bakers. They're being judged on a professional level, and it can be very difficult, which adds a lot of plucky charm to the concept. The minimalist editing and general lack of interviews or extra gimmicks adds to the feeling of being there in the tent with them. And when we do get backstory, we literally follow them into their homes. We meet their families, we see them go about their day. We connect to them to the extent that what we really want as the audience is to see them succeed and grow and be happy, not necessarily win. Traditional competition shows, at least cooking ones, thrive on pressurizing the already hyper-efficient atmosphere of a world-class kitchen. While a show like, say, Iron Chef may maximize the ticking clock by basically being Food Wars in real life, with constant focus shifting and handheld cameras as well as close-ups on the precise work being done, a Bake Off edit is very slow and deliberate, not unlike baking itself. The contestants are under a similarly tight time constraint to their cooking show counterparts, but the focus, both narratively and visually, is still always on them. We follow their entire through lines for a given episode, their carefully laid out plans, hopefully coming to fruition by the end of the challenge. It's designed to satisfy as opposed to shock and impress, which is inviting to the viewer. That's why Bake Off has inspired so many home bakers in its run, because despite the difficulty of the task, the way it's presented pulses with love and camaraderie and cheeky British humor, which is the best part by a mile. Provocative jokes in the heat of battle, Gordon Ramsay could never. But Paul? Oh, Paul loves it. You presumptuous little minx, I'd dunk you in my tea like a Tim Tam if I could. Why am I still on about Paul Hollywood's eyes, you might ask? Well, just look at them. It's like staring into two pools of divine light. They're somewhat literally diamonds in the rough, and they're a decent enough, or at least hopefully funny enough, microcosm of what makes Bake Off such an absolute joy. For no less than 2/3 of any given episode of Bake Off, Paul Hollywood is, by all accounts, intense and frightening. Is that an over-exaggeration? Probably, but Paul's role is to be the Simon Cowell to Prue's Paula Abdul, at least relatively speaking. He cryptically questions the bakers' risky decisions, he looms somewhat curiously over them just to make them think they might be doing something stupid. He assigns unreasonably hard technical challenges because he likes to imagine the panic and confusion amongst his victims when they read the exactly 2 instructions he left them to make a dish nobody's ever even heard of. But much like Paul's eyes, which burn through you like a baby blue creme brulee torch, but are actually rather lively and inviting when you get used to them, there's a much more pleasant side to this coin. Because under all those buttery croissant layers, Paul Hollywood is a big old bag of pudding. He is a sweetheart, and try as he may, he cannot hide from our prying eyes just how much he loves his job and his precious little bakers. This is not to say Prue is anything resembling a cardboard cutout, but Paul's inability to so much as pretend not to have fun is very much a bit this series loves to run with, because in all honesty, it doesn't make much sense. This is, on the surface, supposed to be a competition, but our judges, even the sour one, cannot help but goof off, crack jokes, and mess with the contestants any chance they get. It may seem trivial, but try to seriously imagine the emotional distance between the judges and the contestants being so brazenly close in any other setting. It would be wildly inappropriate because the goal is so fundamentally different. Paul and Prue are here obviously to provide expertise and actually judge the competition, but since we as the audience are here to see amateur bakers improve and celebrate their hobby, they have the freedom, if not the responsibility, to maintain a welcoming, constructive, positive environment, no matter the cost. Just I mean, look at what my guy does for you. Who else would do this? Gordon Ramsay is not an unfunny guy, but would he ever embarrass himself in an opening skit like this? This is not how you start an episode of MasterChef. Which is also a great segue into the question, if Paul and Prue are out here bringing the fun, what's the point of Nosferatu and Humpty Dumpty? It's a good question. Whether you like their bits or not, the comedians do seem at least slightly unnecessary. If their job is to provide commentary while Paul and Prue aren't there, why not just have an Alton Brown type, someone who knows more about what's happening? Because you don't care about the difference between fondant and marzipan, at least not enough that Noel Fielding's shaky voiceover doesn't cut it. Bless his heart, but you can just feel him reading it off the page. Which is fine, because these two ding-dongs, as well as the numerous past iterations of the ding-dong duo that have worn the mantle, serve a crucial purpose on Bake Off, and that's to keep the contestants calm. It cannot be overstated that these are normal-ass people who just like baking a lot, and while I'm sure there's at least some set of tests to ensure they're actually good at it, it's safe to assume few of them have ever done it for a camera, and not a one for international audiences. It is absolutely terrifying to try to be good at something you love when you're being judged by people who are already great at it, especially with so many more people theoretically watching you. When they screw up, and they're all gonna screw up sooner or later, these two heroes swoop in like sharks that smell tears, and they make it all better by being really nice for a few minutes. Even when things are going fine, they mill about the set, easing the tension and distracting the bakers while they play the many waiting games the craft is subject to. Like Paul and Prue's surprisingly wholesome, constructive role as overseers, the comedians' hands-on, subversive approach as commentators grounds the competition, giving off more of a workshop vibe than anything else. Which is not to say this isn't still a test of skill and resolve in which success is rewarded and failure is punished. Somebody has to go home, but the best little trick Bake Off pulls is that they don't end the episode with it. That doesn't sound like much, but I really enjoy it, okay? Season-long competition shows almost always end the episode right when somebody goes home, partly because it feels like a natural point of closure, but also partly because it creates intrigue for the next episode, usually in the form of an anxious show-out bite. And to a certain extent, a Bake Off episode does end with somebody going home. They do their drawn-out goodbyes, and everybody hugs, and Paul and Prue say nice things about them to encourage them to keep baking or whatever. But then they hit you with the phone call. The star baker for the week just calls home to say they got star baker. And that's the last thing they do. And it's adorable, it really is, like every time. And although it may not create much intrigue for the next episode, this order of events does, on a very fundamental level, remind you that this show is not about finding a winner and a loser, but the people who have put the effort forth and get to do the thing they love together for as long as they're allowed. And even if your favorite goes home, you will undoubtedly fall in love with another next week, so you're gonna come back anyway, because this is pure, unfiltered comfort viewing. The phone call reminds you that we're all here to have a good time, to celebrate baking, and to fawn over Paul Hollywood's Coral Blue No. 2 Soul Stealers. You didn't think I'd come back again, did you? It's the gift that keeps on giving. Paul, you scrummy little bonbon, you. I'd like to drizzle you in chocolate.
Sembra una mobile